It's a new year, it's a new season, and yes, it's a new Isekai. Because of course. And yes, I will freely admit that I watch all of the Isekais every season, I can't help it, I'm literally an addict. And yes, I'm actually the target market for these never-ending Isekai shows, no matter how simple or basic or bad they might be. With that being said, alright, Headhunted to Another World from Salaryman to Big 4. I just watched episode 1 and 2 and I made some thoughts on it, though the show is far from the most complex. Let's just dive in and discuss. First of all, here I have to say that this show has a very simple concept and so far a very simple execution of that concept. This isekai is definitely more of the comedic ones than one of the serious ones. Everything so far in this show has that tint of self-irony, self-awareness, and playing with the concept in that more of a less self-serious way and not really taking itself or anything in the show too seriously, at least thus far. Even in the way our MC gets summoned to another world is by being hit by an old lady on a scooter, which I think is actually a first. I don't think I've seen that in Isekai so far before. But yes, he gets hit by an old lady on a scooter and takes a gravity-defying massive leap, and I guess he then dies to be summoned by the Demon Lord in this new world, and he has been actually handpicked by the Demon Lord. Not because he has any special powers, not because he is a genius of some sort. No, he's just a hardworking salaryman that is good with making deals, negotiating, and getting things done in the company he was working for. The Demon Lord even somehow got hold of his resume and work experience, and he can apparently just see everything going on in the real world, and that's why he chose specifically to summon this guy to be this fourth Big 4 character. And right from the get-go, as I mentioned, yeah, they do kind of just go harder on the comedic elements here. The Demon Lord being like, hey, I'm not going to force you to stay, but, we do have really good benefits, you get your own office, full worker rights here, you know what I mean? And they definitely do play it up to be more of a light-hearted anime. Nothing in episode 1 or 2 so far has had any sort of underlining potential to be super serious. Yes, technically, the self-contained story in episode 2 has potential serious undertones, but they didn't really go too much into that at all, and it resolved very quickly. It's not to say there isn't potential for it to be more dark and gritty and, let's say, serious throughout the rest of the season, but I don't think that's what the show really wants to go for. They want to keep it being relatively lighthearted without being too down in the ditches, so to speak. For a concept standpoint though, yeah, I do like the underlying base concept of, yeah, we have this guy, he was isekai'd, he's in this new world, but he doesn't have some crazy, stupid, level 1 skill that makes him instantly super mega powerful, and that's the show, right? We have had way too many isekais of that sort, and it just isn't really interesting. Like, it doesn't really do anything for me when you have an isekai MC be summoned to another world or end up in another world, and he has some stupid OP cheat skill that just makes everything easy, and nothing is a challenge, and you just see him go through the world, and it doesn't really matter what comes up, because of course he can always deal with it, and that's that. I do like that in this isekai, yeah, our MC is an average Joe. He's a good salaryman, he is good at negotiating with people from different areas, countries, whatnot, and has that skill. And he has certain character traits that enables him to be good at that. Like, that's a much more interesting base concept where you can actually build from on a narrative standpoint and character standpoint. And I do have some hope that, yeah, over time, they might actually do something more with this in a narrative way to make our MC even more interesting and slowly but surely have him go on his own sort of journey, and hopefully we can actually see him use his intellect, which has been the main focal point so far in episode 1 and 2, where he actually has to think, plan, execute, and actually uses his brain, his skills, to try to resolve these negotiations and disagreements between parties, and not just some stupid skill, just force things to be how he wants them to be. Before we get into the latter portion of this video though, if you are enjoying it, remember to like and subscribe. Greatly appreciate it and it helps out the channel, so thank you. Now, the latter portion of this video, I want to talk a bit about the narrative potential of this show, which I think there can be some. Like, even as I said, with the narrative and the concept being very simple and more on the lighthearted, humoristic side, I do think that our MC has some potential to be interesting if they make a proper narrative character journey for him throughout season 1. We do get to know some of his backstory, right? He struggles with self-confidence. He's always been sort of put in projects to solve, and he's worked super hard. He's never gotten recognition from anyone. He's never had a boss that cared about him or cared about his efforts. Just put him in the trenches to solve something, and right when things starting to go well, he was transferred to a new area, right? To do all the grueling work again, never be recognized or rewarded for all his hard work. And because of that, he has all this potential lack of self-confidence and self-doubt and views himself as weak and useless. And I do think that, yeah, you know, if we see him continually just doing really well here in this new world, doing all this negotiating that has become his new job in this new world as well, negotiating with these different tribes and organizations to make the demon army more powerful. Yeah, I mean, I think that can be somewhat interesting if they actually build on his character slowly but surely throughout season 1 to have him end up being more of a self-confident, self-reliant, and more of a fleshed out character. From a concept side, as I mentioned before, yeah, I do think that it's somewhat interesting to have this concept be as different as it is. Yes, we've had, of course, Isekai shows before where we have the MC uses brains and not some stupid skill in this new world. And we've had isekais where the main character is more of an administrative ruler, like the realist hero, etc., etc. But I do think the concept is somewhat unique, having him just be the salaryman, and his job is simply to help the demon army be organized, to quell disagreements between different parties, and to forge new alliances between new tribes and whatever else in this world. I think that's a somewhat unique concept, and if they actually work on that, it can be an interesting enough narrative, even while it being somewhat simple, as they haven't really done anything so far in episode 1 and 2 to really build the complexity, but there is at least some potential. I mean, just the concept itself of having a show about this is your organization, or in this case, the demon army, and you have to make sure everything works. You have to, you look through your organizational chart, and you have to quell disagreements, and you have to actually solve all these in-organizational issues. To me, at least, that's kind of interesting. Like, hey, how do you deal with all these interpersonal conflicts and prejudices between different races and people and monsters? If they actually go into that in a kind of proper way, it might actually be kind of interesting to me, That's not to say that they are on that route right now, and narratively speaking, yeah, they are taking many shortcuts, like the instant friendship with the red-haired waifu, the tsundere. It's like, yeah, that's lazy, it's simple, nothing so far is really developed much, or narratively speaking, nothing so far in episode 1 or 2 has been super complex. In episode 2 at least, they do try to have a self-enclosed storyline with the ogre tribe and how that develops. It's sort of is a coup d'etat almost, but there again as well, because it's a self-contained sort of 20-minute story to get this negotiation done, nothing really gets developed. Like, characters and the story within this specific arc gets resolved in one episode, so there's no time for things to actually develop or stakes to be raised or you to really feel super engaged with it, because before you even have a chance to, it's done, right? Moving on to the next problem. And if the show keeps having these shortcuts where they don't really want to spend that much time building up stakes or building up a conflict or a problem for our MC to overcome and solve, it's not going to be super engaging or interesting for a lot of people to keep watching, right? Because the unique concept, or relatively unique concept, is only going to get people so far in being interested in watching week by week. I do hope they actually spend a good bit of time during the rest of season 1 to make these character interactions more interesting, actually spend time on character development. The only character we really know anything about so far is the main character, which is good, of course, that he gets some backstory and work done on him. But we don't know really anything at all about the red-headed waifu, or the other demon generals, or the Demon Lord, or more or less any other character in the show so far, and we still know very little about the world. And if they don't flesh these things out over the course of the season, well, the world is going to feel pretty empty. The characters aren't going to feel very complex or interesting, and they're just going to be sort of cardboard placeholders for characters instead of being actual characters. And I hope it doesn't go that way, because that would be a downer. My biggest hope for this show is that they actually spend some time to make the negotiations episode by episode interesting, that they make the conflicts that they have to resolve interesting, that they actually put some forethought into making these things less than obvious for the viewers, and they can't just instantly figure out what's going to happen throughout the episode because characters are too stupid to realize before they are supposed to. If they actually make the negotiations, and the interplay between these tribes and races interesting and in-depth and somewhat complex, I think many people, at least people like myself, will find that pretty interesting to just enjoy over the course of a season. Even if the character work and narrative work keeps being somewhat simple, it can still be relatively enjoyable, but there's not going to be too much meat to delve into, so to speak, episode by episode with a story like this, which is also why I'm not really planning on covering it weekly, at most bi-weekly, if people are interested in this anime moving forward, and if this video does well, of course. Anyhow though, as a whole, I think the show has some potential. It's far from realized so far. The concept is not the most generic. There are some unique elements here that can be interesting, but I just hope they spend time on the important things I've already outlined and mentioned, and that we get some good value out of that moving forward in the rest of the season. That being said though, what do you think of this show? If you watched it already, like it, hate it, leave all those thoughts and anything else in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please remember to check out all my links, including my Patreon. You can check out that if you're interested in joining. Would deeply appreciate that, especially if you want to, of course, support me financially. I would deeply appreciate any support you choose to give on that front. Enables me to keep doing this as often as I would like. That being said, hope you have a good day, keep watching anime, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.